So there have been some questions that I just wrote down. One question for you, Chris, and let's keep this really 35,000 feet. When is a PAC allowed to coordinate with a candidate?
The kind of PAC that my lawyers have set up for me, that you have to choose either to be on the independent expenditure side or the coordinated side. I have decided to be on the coordinated side. It's a lot easier to raise money on the other side because you can take unlimited and people don't have to give their names. But I feel that my value to be impactful is to be working with these campaigns and candidates. And so that's why I've chosen to be on the coordinated side.
Okay. And how do you decide on this sort of cost sharing? Like, I think it's, as Jim said, there is no one formula we can say, that this is how much money is needed going forward for anything. But you just negotiate, like, this ad will cost share, this ad you'll distribute, this ad the PAC will pay for. All of that is very much an individual thing, as I understand it. Is that the case?
Yeah, and Brian's a really good example. Jim talked about graduating people, and Brian was one of the first 31st Street Slate members to be graduated because he was having such success raising money. So he's a good example. We filmed him, we created a bio ad for him, we've put some ad buys behind that ad as well. And now he's graduated to, okay, Brian, now let's have you pay for, now that you have the budget and you're ready and we know what ad you need and we have the content, now we'll have you go ahead and pay for that ad. So that's an example of how that's happening, where we have like an Amy Steele, and I mentioned that, this dark Republican money group came in and put over $300,000 behind her opponent in July and August. We sort of saw that as a place where the PAC needed to come in and counteract that dark money. We needed to be stepping in for our candidate and getting her up. So that was a decision where we made that, yes, we do want to put the ad buys behind this for her so we can get her name and her story out as soon as possible.
Okay. So I think I've gotten all of the questions that were put in the chat. If people want to unmute themselves at this point, we're about nearing the end of the formal program. So if you want to drop off whenever, that's fine. Please, feel free. We appreciate your joining us today, and I hope that this has been, sort of a educational experience and also inspiring and charges you up for whatever news is coming in the next week. But if you want to now unmute yourself, we can also go to just an open discussion with question and answer. So please feel free.
I guess I'd like to draw out a little bit of exchange here about, I guess it's actually Anne that asked about where all these videos are available. And we do have a website that that Lisa has put for our YouTube channel. You can see all kinds of videos, including these, and they're all in their own little section, and you'll love them. Over.
Yeah, and that's going to be in my follow-up email. I've sent it out in various forms and invitations and RSVP responses. If the second row of this page, that's a YouTube channel, is all Chris's videos, and they just stretch on, and you can just see all these candidates in there, and we've got new ads we're going to be adding. Who else has a question?
Well, I'll ask one. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, David.
Okay. I'm a builder in California. I helped flip the 10th district here in the state last time around. But but the candidate doesn't need any help this time. He's got it made pretty much. So I've been looking for a way to help out. My friend Jan White introduced me to your group.
Oh.
And I'm thinking, yeah, this looks really good. What I'm wondering is if you have any data on how effective your kinds of efforts have actually been in the past.
You mean the digital ad or just general support of candidates for 31st Street?
I would say in particular, the digital ads, the program that you outlined today.
Chris, why don't you sort of, you've thought a lot about this.
You know, digital's a little bit of a black box, which scares some people and also allows people to, you know, do a little bit of smoke and mirrors sometime. But when I'm trying to look at a metric that I think is most valuable in this sense, I think it's, are people watching the ads? Like, you know, are they watching these ads? So to give you an example, Amy Steele, who I talked about earlier, that the Dark Money put up TV ads, $190,000 in TV ads for her. We couldn't afford to do that for Amy, but what we could do is we could put her up on connected TV, which is people who are streaming their television content either through a Roku or an Apple TV or Hulu, or if you're now watching, a lot of people watch the MLB through the MLB app. And in order to watch the next inning, you have to watch a 30-second ad or you will not be allowed to the next inning. So what we did with Amy is we spent $638 on connected TV, getting her up. So a TV experience like her opponent had. But for that $638, we got 10,000 full views of Amy's ad. And that to me is just talk about a big bang for a buck and full view of the ad. I couldn't be happier. That to me is a sign that what we're doing is working. We also had a really great track record in Virginia last year where 31st Street supported our efforts. And all 12 of the candidates that we worked with and that hired us to do their ad buys, they all won. So we think we've had a really good track record. I feel great about it. And it is a way for our candidates to get up on, as I mentioned earlier, finding you wherever you are, whether it's on your mobile phone, whether it's on your phone when you're playing Words with Friends on Scrabble, or whether you're a desktop person who goes to CNN.com and you got to watch our video before you see Anderson Cooper. However it is you consume your media, that's where we try to find you.
And just to emphasize that what's happening is that you're targeting very specific voters. It's not a perfect process, but you've got a message that you believe will resonate with those voters.
Yeah.
So much better than regular TV. That's such a blunt instrument.
Well,
Yes, and Chris,
I'll give you another example just real quickly, but like Jason Kane is one of our candidates, and every poll tests
Raise your hand.
two bio frames. For Jason, we tested his military frame and we tested a share values frame. And what we found out was that the military frame and his background was off the charts crazy. People loved it. It actually put him up in the polling. With one exception, African-American voters did not like it. It actually put him down, and it was the shared values frame that worked better with him. So what will we do? We'll have two ads, and we will target the one ad in the way that resonates with African-American voters, and we'll target the other ad in the way that resonates with our persuasion universe. And that's the power of what you're able to do with digital, but also with targeting, but also because of the way that I don't do scripted ads. If you go in and make 3 ads, that's all you've got. I do this documentary style where I collect all this footage, and then whatever it is I need to make and however I need to tailor it for a different audience, I can just have my editor pull it and make it.
Chris, can you tell her about Nancy Guy? Because I think that's a perfect example of your effectiveness.
Hi, Anne. It's so good to see you.
See you too.
So Nancy Guy in Virginia is one of these candidates. She had chosen a different digital vendor, and the way it worked out in Virginia was the same in North Carolina. No one else had video content except for me. As a matter of fact, Kathy held a fundraiser for me in September, which we called a Move the Meter fundraiser. And what we wanted to do was raise money to go to all those candidates that hadn't worked through us and give them a piece of content so we could help them. They were dead heat races, help them move the meter and get over the finish line. So because of the money that Kathy helped raise, we went to Nancy Guy in October and said, hey, we've got money for you. What can we make you? What will move the meter? And she said, I'm underwater with Black voters. I said, what does the polling say is the most important issue to them? She said, Medicaid expansion. Fantastic. went to our footage from June, pulled exactly what we needed, made her a 30-second spot in 2 days. And then what we did, and this is because of 31st Street giving us this on-the-ground report and canvassing, was we were learning that we were not targeting African-American voters in terms of their turnout as low a score as we needed to. And so we decided we were going to digitally, we didn't care what the numbers told us that their likelihood to vote was. We were going to talk to every Black voter in that district. So we took those spots and we targeted them to African-American voters all the way down to a turnout likelihood of 0%. Nancy Guy ended up winning by 41 votes. And she tells us she couldn't have done it without us. And so that's really one of our stories that we're excited about. And we couldn't have better learning coming into North Carolina, where that is the state of play in every single race that we need to flip. We have a history of Black voters who have not been turning out to vote. And how do we engage them in longer term conversations and make them feel more a part of this? And part of that is what I just referred to with Jason, which is talking to them about things that they care about. If I go to them with a military message that I know they're not interested in, that's not very effective. You want to communicate with people on what they care about, because that's the first question everyone has when they look at it. How is this about me? And digital allows us to try and make it about people. And in a game of inches like Nancy's, make the difference. And I promise you, these seats that we're trying to flip in North Carolina are more like Nancy's than some of these more comfortable Virginia races that we very easily flipped.
David, does that answer your?
Good.
David, you're on mute, so I don't.
Oh, yeah, unmute yourself, David.
Yeah, I think that pretty well covered. I give that like an A+++.
Okay.
And then add another plus because it's pandemic. Just imagine it's not a situation where you have multiple contacts being made face to face, and phone calling and texting and digital ads and TV ads. And I mean, you're taking out the biggest piece of retail politics, which is door-to-door door knocking, you know.
Right.
So,
I was thinking of trying to fund a 50,000 postcard mailing via friends and co-hosts, but I'm beginning to think from what you said, Chris, I'm thinking postcards probably don't have the impact of what you're doing, because what you're doing is so specific in terms of addressing the concerns of people.
The other thing
do we have information on that? I'm sorry, do we have information?
Yeah. Well, the other thing I would say to you is that what's in the news right now is that the Postal Service is in complete disarray and we don't know what the situation is. And quite frankly, this is the reason why digital is so much more important, not just because of what you're talking with postcarding, but I can tell you that the biggest line item other than TV in every one of these candidates' budget is mail. They're all spending about $200,000 on mail that we have no idea when it's going to reach people, if it's going to reach people. It has me very alarmed anyway. Also, there's going to be so much mail this time around that are people just, you know, chucking in the trash can, like we just don't know. I think digital is just, it's always important, but this cycle where it's the only chance, and I told everyone who sat in my chair this may be the closest you come to looking voters in the eye. So let's bring it here, because you know, a piece of mail isn't going to do that. And we didn't even anticipate at the time that Trump would be messing around with the Postal Service. So that's another concern I have about postcards, which have been effective, is we just don't know.
and Barbara Woodall has contributed an observation in the chat that I think is generally understood, that in a high turnout election like this will probably be, general postcards don't have an effect. And one of the most, 31st Street pretty much buys into the postcard not being the most impactful strategy. And a group that we respect very, very highly, You Can Vote in North Carolina, probably the best voter mobilization group in the country, they're not using postcards at all because they don't feel it's worth the investment. So, and that is irrespective of what Chris mentioned about the postal service being, you know, an issue. So, yeah, I'm glad we caught you before you wrote that check.
Yeah, the last thing I would say too, one thing I'm seeing consistently in all these polls without divulging anything, we know this is going to be a crazy high turnout election because of the guy at the top. But the problem is people drop off down their ballot. And so I will tell you that in every poll that I'm looking at, our state leg candidate is running double digits behind Cooper and behind Biden, which means we haven't consolidated that base, which means they don't know our name. So the most critical thing for us to be doing right now is to make sure that everyone that goes to vote for Joe Biden or Roy Cooper knows our candidate's name so that they pull that lever all the way down. And that's the focus of what we're trying to do, is to burn their name and face into voters' minds, that they have enough familiarity to say, oh yeah, I saw an ad, that Brian Farkas looks like a good guy, kind of thing.
There's a question in the chat from Molly Katz. Do you expect higher voter participation in the Black community this fall because of the recent racial justice actions? I don't know, Jim, Chris, whoever.
I would say yes. I would say yes. Yeah.
The question is, will it? That's another thing. What I just said to you about how we're running behind, same thing with Black voters. Cooper and Biden are running double digits ahead of our candidates. So we've got to make that connection. We've got to connect our people to those issues. And that is something that I pushed to get in a lot of our polls, and that did come back. So we will be tailoring messaging to voters of color on those issues.
Okay.